Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back into the studio. This week's video will bear some semblance of me becoming sick last week and losing my voice and a bit of my will. So there will be a little bit less talking than what you're used to in this video in order for me to recover properly and hopefully make a little bit of a better video next week. So you'll have to excuse that. Expect more active talking during next week's video for sure. Having said that, there's still a little bit of talking going on here today, so let's get started. Last week we built the armature for this project, and this week we will begin sculpting it. I mentioned that I should have posed the armature a bit more accurately. I mentioned that last week, that I should have posed the armature a little bit more accurately before gluing the armature to the wooden base. And that's why I'm struggling right here at the beginning of the video to push and pull the armature around to get it to where I want it to be. It's not that it's impossible, but it's a little bit more difficult than it needs to be, and you can see that it does require a bit of effort. Because I'm trying to emulate a situation I was once in, and most of you will find yourself in a similar situations, I think, I will not be sculpting from life. There was not enough space in my apartment bedroom to have a live model. Actually, my reference will only be a few humble images, like this one, of Michelangelo's Randanini Pietà from Milan. I'm not going to try and make a copy of the sculpture, and definitely not trying to sculpt both Mary and Jesus. Obviously we only made one armature here, not two. I'm just going to try and use the figure of Jesus as a starting point, as an inspiration. It really helps that the reference sculpture is unfinished as well. I could have copied some more finished piece, of course, but I think that trying to copy an unfinished piece or a broken piece of sculpture can sometimes be just as rewarding and a little bit more exciting, giving you a little bit more freedom. It also means there's a little bit less of a high skill ceiling needed to reach the level of work that a master sculptor has been able to reach. Obviously we're working at a much smaller scale, which makes that more difficult as well. Here there is a lot that can be left up to the imagination, which can only help us in achieving a decent result without getting too nitpicky in how accurate of a copy we're able to make. It's not really about copying sculptures in this case. I actually used to do this quite a bit. I would look through books with images of old broken sculptures and come up with compositions, using them as starting points for my personal sculptures. I did it once with another of Michelangelo's unfinished pieces that is here in Florence, which is nicknamed the Atlas, and I made kind of my own finished version of that. There are many good ancient Greek sculptures as well that you can do this with, and a whole slew of unfinished Michelangelo pieces that you can use as inspirations for a similar project as well. And it's a good jumping off point. It's a good starting point if you're not entirely sure how to compose or what to make, or you're looking for reference. Let's take a second to thank today's sponsors, my Patreon supporters on Patreon, who have ensured the continued existence of this channel and allowed me to upgrade my gear bit by bit, making better looking and better sounding content for all of you watching. If you are interested in supporting the channel, or perhaps interested in getting personal feedback on your sculptures from me, then Patreon is the place for you. You'll get in-depth feedback on techniques and how you can apply them to your own work. Anything sculpture related goes. We can talk about armatures, supplies, mold making, anything you need help with in your sculpting endeavors. So check it out, there's a link in the description below. And again, thank you so much to those of you who have given generously and supported me. It really means the world. The clay I'm using is the very same I always used to use when I was working at home in Norway, and that is Sculpting NSP Medium. The reason I choose this clay is because it works well for small scales, because it's a pretty hard clay, so it's not going to get pushed around and mushed around too much on me, and it leaves me plenty of control, which is necessary in a very small and diminutive scale like this. This sculpture is about 20 centimeters tall, so it's pretty small, maybe like 1/8 scale or so. Sculpting NSP Medium is an oil-based clay, which means that once I'm done with the piece, the sculpture can sit out and decorate my room. And in my old apartment, my entire bedroom used to have shelves filled with pieces like this all over. Now with water-based clay, you can't really do this. You can't really display your work in the same way because it needs to be wrapped up, right? Or needs to have a mold made of it. But in our case here, we're not in a position to make a mold. We're just doing this in our bedroom, and so I think oil-based clay is the best option. Oil-based clay is also a lot easier to work with when you're working in small scales. Small amounts of water-based clay is not going to hold a lot of water, and so it'll dry out really fast. A small thin sculpture is better served being made in something like oil-based clay. And if you're working in your bedroom as well, clean, good air is going to be important. You want to be able to breathe in your bedroom, I assume. And water-based clay leaves silica dust in the air, which is not good for you. Oil-based clay can leave a little bit of a smell, but it certainly won't leave much dust, which is a big plus in my opinion, especially if you're sharing your apartment with someone. Let's take a quick second to talk about some updates that's been made to my Patreon page in recent months. I've just started putting out exclusive Patreon content, videos that you will only have access to if you are my supporter on Patreon. The first series we will embark on is the Beginner's Guide to Figure Sculpture, We will cover how to sculpt a standing nude female figure in contrapposto in half life-size scale, and I'll cover everything from the armature, the sculpting, and eventually the mold making as well. This will be the one stop for all the answers you'll need for sculpting a standing nude figure. Whether you sculpt from life or from photo reference, we will cover how to work from both. One video will be released on the first Thursday of every month. The video will be a little bit longer than what you're used to seeing here on YouTube, probably around 35 to 45 minutes long, and it's all going to be real-time footage, no time lapses. And I will do my best to use a very linear process with clearly defined steps, making it a little bit easier to follow and a little bit easier to do on your own. Any patron pledging $5 or more will get access to the videos. I'm excited to finally be putting out exclusive Patreon content to my Patreon supporters, whose support is greatly appreciated. So check out my Patreon page by clicking the link in the description below. The idea for this sculpture is that I'll eventually use it as a part of a potential, anyway, two-figure composition. What that will be or what form that will take is still very much up in the air and something I haven't put much thought into just yet. Sometimes I find that less thinking and a little bit of work can begin to set ideas in motion more easily than if you just sit around thinking about what you're gonna be doing instead of actually doing it. Too much sitting and not enough action isn't always the best, and so even if it's just a small and ultimately somewhat disappointing piece that's not necessarily heading in the exact direction that you'd like it to head in, it will be the beginning catalyst for a potentially new project that will have and need a lot more refining in order for the final form to become apparent. But I think it's important to mention that even when you don't know exactly what you want to make, it can be very helpful to make something. Especially when that something is both low risk, it's not going to take up a lot of space, it's not going to take up a lot of money, and it's quite short on the time investment front as well. All of these things are the case for this piece here. Technically speaking, I won't delve much into what's happening on screen here today. There are other videos for dealing in depth with the technical aspects of sculpture, and this is neither the video nor the week for such talks, I think. But as you can probably see if you watched any of my other videos, you'll notice a very similar approach, and you'll see me doing a lot of the very same things that I'll usually do while working on any piece, really. So, the scale, because this is probably the smallest sculpture that I've made on the channel yet, but the scale doesn't really matter as far as my technique goes too much. I try to keep things pretty much the same, no matter the scale. There's still a lot of drawing on the surface, there's still a lot of building contours, I'm still considering structure, and I still worry about the core of my sculpture first and foremost before dealing with any of the extremities. However, if you feel unsatisfied watching this video and are hungry for more technical, deep sculpting videos, then I suggest checking out my Patreon page in the description below for more in-depth sculpting videos. Thank you for watching this week's somewhat stunted video. I apologize for it being as short on content as it was compared to the usual videos. Hopefully you'll excuse me, and hopefully next week things will be back to normal and I can put in the normal amount of effort without having to worry about suffering severe consequences for it. Next week we will push this piece to a finished product, and I'll show you some tips and tricks for how to finish the surface of an oil-based clay sculpture. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you let this little experiment inspire you, and if you were on the edge, on the fence about starting sculpting, hopefully it pushed you over the edge to take the plunge and start sculpting a bit for yourself. If you enjoyed the video and want to learn sculpture, check out my Patreon page. I give feedback and critiques on people's work, and we talk about whatever you need help with in your sculpting endeavors. And right now there is exclusive sculpting content on my Patreon. The first series we have embarked on is the Beginner's Guide to Figure Sculpture. I'm super excited to be creating exclusive content for Patreon, and I hope you will be too, and we'll take a look. The link to my Patreon is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for a new video next Thursday. Subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes out. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button and share with your friends and family. It really helps me out a lot. Thank you for watching, stay creative, and I hope to see you in the next one.